All right, let's break down the changes to 401k plans in 2025. A 401k plan is a company-sponsored retirement plan, and the limit in 2024 is $23,000 worth of contributions by the employee. Now that is being adjusted in 2025. The IRS just announced, if you can see here, that the plans in 2025 have increased to $23,500, up from $23,000 even in 2024. Now, you can do a catch-up contribution of $7,500 if you are over 50 years old. There is also a max contribution. This includes employee and employer contributions to a 401k of $69,000 in a year. Now, obviously, this $23,500, that is almost $2,000 a month that you contribute to a 401k. Now, if you are able to do this, mad props, because that means you are winning with your money. You have higher income and you've been able to cut out expenses, so mad props. The total contribution of $69,000 can be very important for business owners. So if you are a small business owner or even a large business owner and you want to contribute into a 401k, you can contribute your $23,500, but then the company can contribute as well, up to a total of $69,000 between the employee and the employer portion. This can be a huge retirement benefit because you can, one, reduce your taxes right now and contribute a chunk of change into a retirement account. Now, the increase, it comes for 401ks, but you do not see an increase in IRAs. So the IRA limit remains at $7,000. It is $7,000 in 2024, and it will be that in 2025. If you want a breakdown of IRAs, I will put a link in the description of a video that I made that breaks down traditional versus Roth IRAs. Now, funds that are put into a 401k typically are often pre-tax. So unless your employer has a Roth option on a Roth 401k, most of the time the money that you're going to be contributing to your 401k will be pre-tax. That means it is going to reduce your taxable income, which can save you money on taxes this year. So for a quick example, I'm going to take, say if you contributed $10,000 into your 401k this year and you were in a 22% tax bracket, obviously you can just take $10,000 times 22% and you would be saving taxes of $2,200. Now, if you want to do this calculation yourself and figure out what it is, it's pretty easy. You can go find the tax brackets. This is for 2025. You can see each marginal tax bracket. Now remember, on taxes, it's not, your whole income is not taxed at a certain amount. Everything is marginal. So right here, if you are single, your first $11,925 is taxed at 10%. Now, any earnings that you have from $11,926, which is $1 above the other threshold, up to $48,475 is taxed at 12%. And then anything above $48,476 is taxed at 22%. It's not if you just all of a sudden, like right here, if you just all of a sudden made $49,000, that all $49,000 would be taxed at 22%. That is not how the tax brackets work. Your first $11,925 would still be taxed at 10%, even if you bumped up and were in a higher threshold. So you can go in and calculate how much money you are going to save on your taxes just by going and seeing which bracket you are going to be in, and go and multiply your contributions by the tax bracket that it is in. So for example, if I made $60,000 and I contributed $10,000, then I would be falling that $60,000, the $10,000 that I'm contributing would fall into 22%. I would multiply it by 22%. Now, if I only made $50,000 and I contributed $10,000, then only a portion of that $10,000 would be 22%, and then the other portion would be 12%. So make sure you take that in consideration if you ever do your calculation by yourself. Now, obviously, contributing the full amount would be tough for most people. $23,500 is a chunk of change, but I want you to see just how even small contributions, even if you cannot handle maxing out your 401k, doing small contributions can make a big difference. So I'm going to jump over here to an investment calculator. Now, if my current age, let's say I'm 25, I want to retire at 65, and I have nothing starting off right now. Now, maxing out your IRA or your 401k would be about $2,000 a month. Now, if you can't do that, don't let that stop you from going and doing at least a little bit of investments. Like right here, even if you can only do $100, now I'm going to do the average return of 10%, which is the 30-year average for the S&P 500. Now, if you can only do $100 right now, start doing it, because check this out. If you calculate that out, that is $632,000. That is a chunk of change. Now, obviously, if we have just a little bit more, even if we can just do $150, it's going to change this by a good chunk of change. The $150 every single month almost jumps it up to $1 million. Now, that's the cool thing. You can go in and get an investment calculator, go figure this out. Obviously, if you're starting earlier, the bigger the difference on compounding interest, you're going to see significant gains. So if I'm starting at 20 years old, I mean, it jumps up to 1.5. That's why starting to invest early and investing often is so important. You can back into this. Say you're in your 40s and you're like, oh man, I'm still starting from zero, but I want to hit that $1 million mark. You can come in here and be like, okay, what's it going to take for me to hit that $1 million, right? And you can play with it until you get to the point where you're like, okay, it's probably going to cost me like $750 a month to get right around $1 million. My biggest goal is to make it so that you don't get discouraged. Do not get discouraged if you haven't started investing for retirement. Find ways now to save some money and put it into an investment account and let your money start working for you. Now, before you start investing, I typically encourage people to have $1,000 in an emergency fund and 6 months worth of living expenses. And I would put this into a high yield savings account. I personally have mine at CIT Bank. It makes 4.55%. Now, with inflation being as high as it is, it may not be keeping up with inflation, but it's at least somewhat close, and it's a heck of a lot better than just leaving it in my checking account where it makes no money, or putting it into a traditional savings account, which at most national banks are pretty low. So find a high interest savings account, put it in there. Now, anything beyond that 6 months and that emergency fund should be invested somewhere where it's going to have a greater return. An S&P 500 index fund is a great option. Your 401k. I also like to invest in real estate. So if you want to keep some of that back to buy a rental property at some point, but anything beyond 6 months worth of living expenses should be put to better use than leaving it in a savings account. Now, 100%, if you do have credit card debt, if you have any credit card debt at all, you should not invest in a retirement account before you pay off that credit card debt, because credit cards can charge you over 20% interest in some instances, and that is a huge chunk of change. You're not going to have that consistent of a return within the stock market. So pay down all of your credit card debt before you start investing in the stock market. And then once you have those 6 months worth of living expenses, you've got all of your high interest debt paid down, go and invest in the stock market. Another thing to consider with 401ks is you should at least contribute into your 401k to the point where you can take advantage of all of the company match that is offered. A lot of times companies will offer company match. That is, if they say, hey, if you contribute 3%, we'll match that dollar for dollar up to that 3% limit. Beyond that, we're not going to keep matching. So you should at least contribute up to the max where you get your employer match. Now, anything beyond that is just extra, and it's awesome, and I think it is important to do. But if you don't contribute up to that employer match, you're just throwing away free money, because they won't give it to you unless you contribute as well. Do me a favor, if you have found value in this video, please hit subscribe and like, and thank you for watching. We'll talk to you guys next time.